You touched on broadband. Obviously, that's a big issue for you. $1 billion that the governor is talking about to dedicating, filling in the gaps. We know that here in the North Country, up to 20% of the folks still don't have access to or reliable broadband and high-speed internet. The federal infrastructure bill is going to send about $170 billion to New York State. Do we have any idea out of that what percentage might be dedicated to here in northern New York as far as dealing with broadband? So if you have that money coming in and the governor pitching another $1 billion from the state, how much will be going to addressing the issue here?
Well, there's different parts to this. There's federal money involved in her pitch and state money, and then also the other 170 billion that you mentioned. So there's different parts in this $1 billion plan. I think not only the money, in which I had mentioned before, she wants to streamline this process, the connect all. She wants to get rid of, from what I understand, and something that I have been pushing for, is to get rid of the fees associated with building out broadband. We have the DOT tax, we have the surveying fees that utilities put on. This is, on one hand we're saying we want to build out broadband to rural areas, we want to build out broadband throughout New York State and to the North Country here, but we're going to put another fee on here. So I have a bill actually, and it appears in her State of the State that this will address this. I have a bill that says any federal money that we get, because it's not clear yet, any federal money that we get is not, they cannot tax that through the DOT tax. And I would go as far along as to say that we really need to work on streamlining this process to help out these smaller broadband companies that want to connect homes and families in these rural areas. Also, the utilities they're not playing ball with these smaller broadband companies here. They're charging some surveying fees. I understand it's a business, they have to charge something, but sometimes they are charging such an exorbitant amount per mile that it's just not worth it for these companies to build out. We need to address that, need to address the DOT tax, need to streamline the process to address all of this. You can put all the money you want into it, and which is good, we want money into it, but you need to address those issues as well.
You mentioned the utilities charge fees, the state DOT charges a fee to run cable, to run fiber optic. You've had one bill pass so far, and you're introducing a second one that will address those issues. Your hope is that will allow the broadband providers to put their fiber optic cable, to string it, to get it into the areas it needs to go at a cheaper cost. And for many of them, is that the holdup right now, that these fees are driving up the cost so much that they're just not going into these areas?
Exactly, certainly. I mean, if you have a pot of, let's say, $10 million, and the fees and other things are eating up so much of that, and $10 million only gives you, let's say, 100 miles of that, the more money that we can save on these fees and everything else, the more miles we can put out there and connect to more homes. So, I mean, those numbers are just for an example, but obviously, if we're having this pot of money chewed up with DOT tax and fees and all of this other stuff, then, we could use that money to go further to get more houses and families connected to broadband internet.
And you were part of the Upstate Cellular Task Force to expand cell service. You came out with a final report calling for about the need for $600 million to really address the issue. Does the governor offer up any money for that in the State of the State or in her budget proposal? Or is that something you think, again, that you might have to turn to the federal infrastructure bill to see if there might be money there for that?
Haven't really seen anything specific in the State of the State. We'll have to see when the budget comes out in a couple weeks here. Her budget comes out, but certainly cellular service, it. I mean, we live in the North Country here. It's a struggle to get it. And I've always said the more and more that we rely on cellular service, because companies aren't investing in landline technology anymore. So that balance is going to be, it's only going to get more reliability upon cellular service and less on landline. And anybody that has a landline, if they don't keep investing in this technology, I have areas in my district that they can't get cellular service. Their landline is so bad that when it sprinkles out, they can't get a connection. So imagine that, no phone. It's like back in the 1920s here with no phone service. So we need to invest in the cellular technology everywhere here in New York State, but especially here in the North Country.
The governor talked about drug and alcohol treatment and going that route. And we know that she has 6 prisons that she's targeted to close by March, including Mariah Shock in Essex County. Is there, and that's raised concerns among you and other lawmakers. We saw the annex close at Dannemora last year, and I think with a number of prisons sitting idle, Lyon Mountain, Chateauguay, Camp Gabriel still not being developed. You've expressed concerns about closing more prisons, and I know a number of people have expressed concerns about closing Mariah Shock because it is a drug and alcohol treatment program that seems to work. Is there anything the legislature can do more, or is it truly up to the governor now, and do lawmakers try to convince her that perhaps the type of program like you see at Mariah Shock is worth keeping?
Well, first of all, let me say I've been through Mariah Shock. I've been through their programs. I've seen the graduations that they have there of these individuals. Excellent program. I back it 110%. It is far and beyond one of the better programs that I've seen with with correctional facilities in the state. I think, and I have a bill in with these shuttered facilities. Even before I took this job, I had 3 shuttered facilities in my area, in my district. It's a blight on the communities, and certainly we can do more. I have a bill in that says the state must address these problems, must address what the plan is going to be. So it sounds like she is going there. But I would say, Tom, that any time that one of these facilities is shuttered in a community, it affects families, it affects the community, it affects a lot of things down the line that people won't see right off. And certainly having these dilapidated, shuttered facilities in communities is a huge issue. It's the state's issue. The state should fix that problem. The state should work with the communities to make sure that something is done with these facilities.
After nearly 2 years, the northern border reopened back in November to Canadians who were allowed to cross the land border, crossing once again without having to have a COVID test. At first, they had to have a negative COVID test to get back into Canada. That got dropped. And so people were encouraged that might bring the Canadians down for the day visits again, come down to shop, to eat, to visit friends and family. Now with Omicron, that's changed again. They have to have a negative COVID test to get back into Canada. Is that having a negative effect on Canadians coming down and visiting us at a time when many hope that, after 2 years, we're finally going to see them again?
Certainly, it's had an effect. And like I said before, I don't know if anybody saw this surge that we're having with Omicron come along this quick. And I'm not going to sit here and bash the Canadian government for putting that back on, but it has an effect. We know that in the daily visits, so to speak, with our friends and neighbors to the north coming down, has a huge effect. People, we talk about testing. You have to have the test within 3 days, 72 hours. It does have a huge effect on that. It is having an effect on cross-border travel. Hopefully, we can get through this surge here I'm being optimistic, like I try to be, within the next month or so, 6 weeks, and we can see a change in that policy again. And I would say a change in the policy for Americans going north, going into Canada, to drop that as well. You have to be vaccinated, doubly vaccinated now. Yep. So I would say there are safety precautions put in place, but certainly it's a work in progress. While we sit here, in the middle of another surge, we're seeing numbers that we hadn't seen in, back at the height of the pandemic in 2020. So it's a work in progress, and certainly we'll continue to work towards that and getting our friends and neighbors down here and getting our citizens here up north.
The state is still working out details of how recreational marijuana is going to work, how it's going to be sold, who's going to benefit from the tax revenue. A lot of communities here in your district have been opting out of allowing pot to be grown or sold in their communities. It'll be legal to use it, but a number of these communities don't want the retail shops or the dispensaries. Do you understand their decision to do that?
Well, it's their decision. I mean, completely a local decision. And what I think a lot of them have said is they want to wait and see. Because if you go through the process to opt out, you can opt in at a later date. And from whatever I have seen from municipalities in my area, they have just said, we want to wait and see. We want to see how this rolls out. I don't think there's any harm in that, but I think you see it's a lot. In some instances, you see a town here and then a town there, a municipality here not opt out, and this one opts in. So, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, you'll see a lot of the ones that opted out once they see how this process progresses. Chances are they may opt in. But completely a local decision. We'll see how it is. We've seen villages opt in or opt out, and the towns remain in. So it's kind of a mix and match, mishmash right now. But we'll see how it plays out, and completely their decision on a local level.
All right, Billy Jones, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it.
Always good to be here.